On today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, time for stock up, stock down after a Thursday night win for the Eagles over the Vikings, 34-28.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Monday edition of the podcast. Shout out to our everydayers for making us your first listen Monday through Friday right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri, and we are continuing to recap a thrilling Thursday night win for the Eagles, 34-28 over the Minnesota Vikings. The home opener gets the Eagles to 2-0. We had a relaxing Sunday watching football. Gino, that's my favorite thing in the world is when the Eagles play on a primetime game. They win, and then you get to enjoy all of Sunday. Not that I don't enjoy watching the Eagles on a Sunday, but when the Eagles play, your mind is on that, right? If they win or they lose at 1 o'clock, then you're just thinking about that afterwards. Or if they play at 4 or Sunday Night Football, you're nervous until that game starts. So you're not really focused on everything else fully. So this Sunday was great to just be like 2-0. Let's watch what everybody else does.
And to look around the NFL and see some of the performances, I feel so good about where the Eagles
what's up
are
with
at
Joe
right now.
Burrow? I mean, holy cow.
I mean, ever since a certain host over at Locked On Bengals called the Eagles mid, the Bengals have been pretty spotty. But I'm with you, man. To see the Eagles come out of that game against New England, people are like, oh, you saw Mac Jones have all this success. It's like, Mac Jones almost beat Miami last night, who's a pretty darn good football team. And
yeah,
I think the three best teams in the NFL right now are all in the NFC. I think Dallas, Philly.
Know. Unfortunately, Dallas and San
Niners.
Fran look really good, Gino.
But hey, it's a challenge, man. This is what we wanted.
Yeah.
We didn't want to just skate and like have those blowout performances.
I mean, I do.
I get it. But look at where Dallas is at and look at where the Eagles were at last year when they're having all these blowouts, right? And like, when was the close game for them? It was just a couple games, that Indy game. And I think the beginning of the year with Detroit, right? Where you're
Arizona too.
Arizona as well. But they need these challenges. Like, I love that Minnesota game where it wasn't easy. But when you had to put it together in the fourth quarter and just get back to what worked, the Philadelphia Eagles figured it out, man. And especially after yesterday, and we'll see how these Monday night games go tonight. Yeah. But you got to be feeling good about where they are in terms of depth, in terms of overall just personnel. I mean, they might have 3 of the top 5 best offensive line or defensive linemen in the entire conference right now.
But you know, you're right, though. The conference in the NFC does look a lot better through 2 weeks than I thought. The NFC is actually 6-0 in out-of-conference matchups so far this year through 2 weeks. So you mentioned how good San Fran looks, Dallas, Seattle, and Detroit in that shootout the other day. The Rams actually look a lot better than I think most people thought this year. So they battled San Fran all day on Sunday. So yeah, it's a better conference, but I still think the Eagles look like the top team at 2-0. Gino, we do have to get to some news, though, before we get into stock up, stock down. One thing the Eagles are going to have to overcome now at 2-0 for the rest of the year is they're going to be without their starting star slot cornerback in Avonte Maddox, who's out indefinitely, got surgery on that torn pec he suffered Thursday night, likely out for the season. This is a tough blow, man, and this, again, continues to be the theme with Avante Maddox over the last 3 years is when he plays, he is a top 3 slot corner. And that's, I thought he had a great game again Thursday night against Minnesota. He just cannot stay healthy, and it's a tough spot because you don't want to try to replace an elite player like this at that spot, but the best of, you said it the other day, the best ability is availability, and he's just never available, and it's a tough spot, and they don't have a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson this year to seamlessly transition in there. They're going to have to rely on Mario Goodrich or maybe Bradbury playing more inside or Sidney Brown, or maybe they find outside help. But this is one of those spots that the Eagles are really deep, but this is one of those starting spots that you didn't really have a really confident backup.
We did a show on this quite literally 3 to 4 weeks ago about how Avante Maddox must stay healthy. And
like the Jenga piece show, I think it was. Yeah.
I think we did a complete, on top of the Jenga piece, like we did a complete show on him. And man, that's
true. We did. Yeah.
My Camilleri jinx is for real. Like I'm telling you, like I said, the Giants were going to be good. They stink. They said that Avante Maddox should stay healthy. He gets hurt. Not only is he hurt, But Zach McPherson's injury in the preseason is only that much bigger right now, because what is the next best option? That's what we have to discuss. And is it somebody from outside the building? I saw somebody bring up the idea of an older Chris Harris, who has been one of the better slot corners in the league in his entire career, is a bit older, but still doesn't have a home.
What's Patrick Robinson up to right now?
Yeah, Bradley Roby's out there too, some ex-Saints. But I think if I were going to just take a quick stab at it, the idea of playing a matchup-based approach. So, like, let's say you're playing Dallas, right? CD lines a lot up in the slot. There was talk in Nick Sirianni's press conference about moving James Bradberry into the slot, but it's like, hey, why don't we just shadow Darius Slay on a good slot receiver and then figure it out after that? And I think it's got to be so much more matchup approach than it was with Avante Maddox. And
I agree.
To see how Josh Jobe performed too, I think you could get by with those three guys in Bradberry, Slay, and Josh Jobe.
Well,
I thought
Ringo
Jobe played pretty well.
Yeah, and Ringo and Ricks are on this team too. So would you rather have Bradberry out there with Goodrich inside, or would you rather have Bradberry inside with, I think, better corners than Goodrich on the boundary? But you're right, it's not that simple. It's not Bradberry, you're now full-time in the slot, or Darius Slay, you're now full-time inside, or Goodrich, or even if they try Ringo, Ricks, Brown, you're 100% correct. It should be matchup-based. Because if CeeDee Lamb is playing inside, or Justin Jefferson on Thursday night, I love that Sean Desai had Slay shadowing him across the formation. That's exactly what you're going to have to do now. So, yeah, if a good receiver moves inside, that's when you put Bradberry down there. But you're not going to have Bradberry in the slot just against anybody. And meanwhile, you're playing a team that has a great boundary corner and Jobe's covering him. That's not the right way to do it. I'm with you. It's totally matchup-based. Because unless you sign somebody else, I mean, you're not replacing Maddox with a permanent full-time slot corner.
And Zach would be a great option if they had him. I know Goodrich took a lot of flack, but being thrown in that environment against that team that does use a lot of it's tough to understand that defense. And they were handicapped not just outside of him. I mean, you're down multiple safeties. You don't have your typical green dot caller. But I think the best approach, especially if we're looking at that Tampa game, which we'll get into the X's and O's down the road, but I mean, Mike Evans, I want James Bradberry on Mike Evans all day. If he's outside, you put him outside. And Slay is probably going to be on Goodwin. And then you figure out the rest after that. It has to be, we are going to take away your best player with our best player, and we'll figure the rest out. That's how it has to be. You can't be Jim Schwartz. You can't be Jonathan Gannon. Just keep those guys on side. Good offensive coordinators are going to move those guys across the formation. Look at what Mike McDaniel is doing with Tyreek Hill. You don't think if they don't go matchup based when they play that game, that he's not going to motion Tyreek Hill over to Josh Jobe's side 90% of the time.
Or on the inside, if you have Mario Goodrich and you don't move Bradberry and Slay in the boundary, you're going to get crushed.
Absolutely. And I think Sean Desai is smart enough, especially after seeing what he did in that Minnesota game with Slay. I know both you and I wanted him to do that, but we weren't confident that was his approach, but he did. So we should feel good about what they are going to do moving forward, especially now that we still have an entire week until this game. It feels like 4 months since we last played. This team should be much healthier, especially in the back end. But you're right, Lou. You can't get into your feels about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You can't say that he wouldn't be a prime piece right now. And same with Marcus Epps. I thought Marcus Epps played a pretty good game against Buffalo the other day. Those guys would come in
CGJ is the missing piece, man. Yeah, not having him on this defense anymore stinks. It really does. And this is the thing from last year. They tried Josiah Scott in the slot for a bit and kept CGJ deep. And once Maddox got hurt in 2022, Scott was not playing very well. Look at that Colts game especially, and that's when they made the decision to push CGJ down in the slot where he played in New Orleans, and it worked great. You don't have, I like Sidney Brown. I think maybe they could try that with him inside, but they don't have that obvious versatile safety deep. You're not putting Terrell Edmonds in the slot. You're not putting Reed Blankenship there. You're maybe Justin Evans. I don't really love that idea all that much, although I thought he had a better game on Thursday. So, yeah, you don't have the obvious replacement. It's going to be really interesting to see what Sean Desai does, but I think Gino and I both agree it should be matchup-based with Bradberry, Slay, and Goodrich. Just whoever the star receiver is, where they are, have your 2-star corners following that guy. Gino, before we take a break, some great news when it comes to special teams. The Philadelphia Eagles have finally released punter Aaron Sipos, and Braden Mann has been signed to the practice squad, former Steelers and Jets punter. This has been a rumor for a few weeks that they were probably going to bring in Mann. Sipos was called up from the practice squad the first 2 weeks to punt. I think he was ranked in the bottom tier in most punting stats over the first 2 weeks. So this is huge, and I think anybody at this point should be an upgrade.
Our long national nightmare is over. I mean, Aaron Sipos was one guy who the only competition they brought in the last 2 years was Ty Zentner, who is Houston's punter right now. And if he's Houston's punter, there's probably a reason he's down in Houston right now. But Aaron Sipos, best of luck to him moving forward. I just think at special teams, with Jake Elliott being the only plus you had to try and upgrade, and to watch what New England did in that game last night on special teams and just like doing all these innovative different things.
Yeah, it was
We're
nice.
not even in the same playing field in that third.
We're not in the same universe.
No, it's not even close. But to see them at least to do something, Brady Man, I think it wasn't my pick. I thought they were going to go with the ex-Saint. It's not Gillikin. It was the other one. But hey, it's better than Aaron Sipos, who had no competition ever since he replaced Cam Johnston.
Yeah, you just got to try to replace him. Maybe Brady Man stinks too, but at least go for it because Sipos was not the answer. That's my same logic with Britton Covey. I think that next up, the Eagles need to try something different with punt returner. But we'll get into more from this game on Thursday night. The Eagles took it 34-28 over Minnesota. Stock up coming up next. First, today's show is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. When you head over to LinkedIn.com, add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs, they help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply.
This episode of LOE is also presented by our friends over at Prize Picks. If you don't know what Prize Picks is by now, I'll clue you in. It's the best form of daily fantasy you are going to play. It is seamless, simple, and easy to use. Why is that? All you have to do is say, is player X, let's say it's DeAndre Swift, is he going to have more rushing yards than his Prize Picks projection? If you had DeAndre last week, you probably did pretty well by saying more. And if Jalen Hurts continues to be on this track of rushing the football, I would guarantee take more on him as well. But all you have to do, it's easy, pick 2 to 6 players, put in as little or as much money as you want. And if you have the skills, you could turn $10 into $250 by winning 25 times your money this football season. Make sure you get in on the action. It's easy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. What does that mean? You put in 100, they'll give you 100. You have $200 to play at Prize Picks. More or less 2 to 6 players. Easy, simple, fast. Go to prizepicks.com today.
All right, Eagles fans, welcome back to a Monday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Shout out to our everydayers for making us your first listen Monday through Friday. Gino, let's get into Stock Up, Stock Down Week 2 edition after the Eagles' Thursday night win over Minnesota, 34-28. And we're going to start with the positives, and I think there were a lot of positives in this game. And how do we not start with, you mentioned him talking about Prize Picks, DeAndre Swift, who had the most rushing yards in a single game for an Eagles running back since LaShawn McCoy in 2013. Swift surpasses 170 rushing yards on 28 carries. And honestly, Gino, this game made me mad about week 1 even more. The fact that he only touched the football twice is unbelievable. Again, Kenneth Gainwell is fine, but it's like when you watch Gainwell week 1 and then you watch Swift on Thursday night, it's like you had a chicken Caesar wrap for dinner when you could have had surf and turf. Like, sure, a wrap is fine. It's going to get the job done. If I'm hungry, it's going to satisfy me. But it's not lobster and steak. Like, that is what Swift was on Thursday night. He clearly is on another level than anybody in this backfield from a talent perspective. And watching the Lions, do what they did at running back and letting this guy walk for a fourth when he's only a few years older than Jahmyr Gibbs, it was highway robbery what Howie did in that draft on day 3 getting Swift.
And there's a reason why he was drafted as highly as he was, right? It's clear. The skill has always been there, right? He was just trying to figure out the place and the environment that was going to make it work.
He looks faster than Miles Sanders did. His burst is, I think, on another level.
Yeah, he has that what we call that closing gear, like being able to get up to that like Ferrari type of gear where most guys, they travel at that Camry rate. You could get up there, but you're never going to hit that like next closing gear where you just take the top off it. And DeAndre Swift really presented that. And it was evident that he is the closest thing that you've had to the back that you've been trying to replace since 2013 in LaShawn McCoy, right? And the numbers match up. And the comparison to him and Kenny Gainwell, I think it's unfair. Kenny's a 5th round pick, right? I think Nick Sirianni kind of hamstrung himself, only giving DeAndre 2 touches. But I said it was so similar to that Kansas City game in 2017 when LeGarrette Blount got 2 touches. And then they're like, hey, maybe if we give him more opportunities, he might be pretty good.
Yeah, and then that Chargers game happened and he destroyed. Yeah.
And this is the Chargers game for DeAndre Swift, right? It's like, you can't take this cat off the field now, man. And you didn't even scratch the surface of what he could do in the passing game, which is the most enticing element of what DeAndre does. But man, if he can bang out 175 yards back-to-back weeks, that would be, I mean, if he goes for 100, you're looking good next week. And I think he could get that on 15 carries. He doesn't need to get whatever he got last week in 20 something, but I mean, I give him 15 plus touches and get him some more in the pass game, and he's only going to get better. His ability to make guys miss in a phone booth behind that Eagles offensive line, which is so predicated on timing and knowing exactly when to hit the hole. That's why DeAndre is the guy. And especially to see Penny, man, it just doesn't look like he has his legs under him yet. And
Boston he looks like Scott goes 2019 Jay Ajayi.
Oh, dude, I didn't want you to say it, but I knew you were going to. It really did. It did not.
And I was a Penny guy this offseason, and I was mad he was inactive last week. He looks shot. And I don't know if that's going to be the case all year, but it's brutal. But yeah, Swift was incredible. And Geno Stock up to the offensive line. I mean, they cleared the way. Swift made a lot. There was more meat off the bones that he took himself with some of these cuts and making more happen. But the Eagles averaged 2.7 yards before contact on these runs on Thursday night. The best team last year's average was 2.1. So that offensive line was clearing up. Jordan Mailata actually had the highest PFF grade of any lineman, I think, in the last decade on Thursday night. I mean, it was an incredible performance. Jason Kelce, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, I thought, had a really good game on the ground as a run blocker. The offensive line, you got to give them credit too. I mean, it's the 4th time the Eagles have recorded 250 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns in a game since the start of last year. The rest of the NFL has 2 such games. And the offensive line, again, these running backs, it's different. It's Miles Sanders, it's Kenneth Gainwell, you mentioned LeGarrette Blount back in the day, it's Jordan Howard, now it's DeAndre Swift. These running backs are really talented, but there's one consistent variable, and it's Jeff Stoutland, Jason Kelce in this line.
Stock up common sense, right? I think it goes back to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And there was an article that came out, I don't know exactly who wrote it, but it was one of the Eagles linemen and saying, they're going to come out here with 3 linemen, drop 8. Why would we not run the football? If that's what teams want to do to protect the explosive plays against the Philadelphia Eagles, well, trying to counteract 250 yards on the ground where they dominate in time of possession 2-1. They take care of the football on the ground too. That seems one place where they tend to take control of it rather than Jalen Hurts just going, getting a fumble or throwing a pick. Like, their running backs are pretty sure-handed right now. I mean, there's not been times where it's Miles Sanders had how many fumbles did he have his rookie year? It was preposterous. It was tough. And DeAndre Swift, sure-handed, explosive. And why is that? Because he has those guys in front of him that are creating 3 yards before he even has to get the contact. Yeah, and then he goes and he's the 4th best running back in terms of rush yards over expected in the last week. That's insanity. They're only going to get better, Lou. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If teams want to go 7-8 in coverage, you better have it. 900 pounds of guy on the inside.
Because 2 years ago, defenses were daring the Eagles to throw the football and stacking the box. The fact that they're backing up like that and having 3 guys rush the passer is, again, that shows how far Jalen Hurts has come in the last 2 years as well. Gino, who else we got for stock up?
Most underrated defensive lineman in the league, Josh Sweat, is a freak of nature.
8 pressures, 5 quarterback hits, and a strip sack on Thursday.
And killed a man. I mean, poor Oli Udoh got absolutely eviscerated.
I giggled like a little kid when I saw that play.
That's just a man saying, I am going to do whatever I want, move you from point A to point B and accomplish my goal. And if teams aren't going to figure out that you have to send help his way, Lou, your prediction of him leading the league in sacks, those numbers are going to come, man, especially teams that don't get the ball out as quickly as Minnesota and New England, teams that hold on. I mean, man, poor Zach Wilson. Like, what's going to happen when they play the Jets or like Daniel Jones? How many is he going to have against them?
Josh Sweat right now, 4th most pressures in the league with 10. He had 8 on Thursday night. Gino, I think he's going to have, again, he had an incredible year last year, very underrated, caught with all the other pass rushers that had 10-plus sacks on this defense. I think he's going to have the type of year Hassan Reddick did in 2022, where I don't want to say he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, but he could be that kind of candidate. The way he looks these first 2 weeks, he looks like a Defensive Player of the Year candidate.
And he's the best edge player you have to defend the run, without a doubt. He is so good at defending the run. His ability to just shed blocks. His length is such a problem for offensive linemen, especially when they put Quisenberry in there, who's a natural center. Like, you're going to overpower and outlength those guys that are interior linemen all day long. And I can't wait to see what happens when you go against Tampa. It's going to be a tougher test going against guys like Tristan Wirfs, but it's at that point where it's like, I expect him to win every single rush every time he's out there.
Do stock up to Jordan Davis right next to him too? I mean,
yeah.
He was disruptive on Thursday. It's not fair for a man that big and powerful. If he's going to have the kind of get-off explosiveness that he's having off the jump, he's almost unguardable at that point. I mean, that sack he had where he literally blows up the lineman into the tight end, into Kirk Cousins. He sacked 3 players on 1 snap. And then the other speed move he made where he got a QB hit on Kirk Cousins. Right now, PFF has him as the 4th highest graded defensive tackle. Jalen Carter, by the way, number 2. Jordan Davis was unbelievable on Thursday.
In back-to-back games, too. And
his snap
fully
count
healthy.
is low, and he's putting up these numbers.
Fully healthy as well. That's what you want to see. And when you knew that he lost 30 pounds and he was coming back healthy after a full offseason, the league had to be put on notice. And you said he looks like Dexter Lawrence light right now. Like, he absolutely does. That's what you wanted in this player. That's what we wanted to see in this player. And how do you pick which guy you're going to double team? I don't know how they do that. Like, I would hate to be an offensive coordinator.
They were doubling Carter, it looked like, on Thursday.
They were. And Carter was still hitting home on every single pass rush, too. And they're just so good. And I think a lot of it has to do as well. One last stock up on my end. I think Zach Cunningham and Nicholas Morrow played an exceptional game after that poor game, that especially Cunningham, who he got his name caught in the limelight a little bit. Christian Ellis, they're like, hey, Nicholas Morrow is even better than this guy. Thought they played pretty well for just being guys that are journeymen, really.
The numbers back it up, too. Zach Cunningham targeted 10 times in that game. Kirk Cousins went 6 for 10 for just 36 yards, a 64.6 rating allowed against Cunningham. And Morrow, he had 2 pressures on Kirk. He had a quarterback hit, and he allowed just 1 reception for 12 yards and 42 coverage snaps. I thought they both battled excellently.
I love that little blitz that they sent Nicholas Morrow on.
Yeah,
I thought it was
too.
like the perfect Sean Desai, just like nice little speed ball off speed pitch there. It's like, oh, where's the pressure going to come from? The guy who's a street free agent like 72 hours before this game kicked off. Hats off to them, man, because there was a lot of pressure coming into this game, especially the game plan that New England put together to show you take the middle of the field and use it against the Eagles. I think they solidified that pretty well, especially not having Reed Blankenship back there either. I mean, you're down 3 or 4 starters without Nakobe Dean as well. Hats off to those guys, man. If they play at that level, just guys that you can win games with, I think you're going to be just fine moving forward.
And then, of course, last one, stock up to Devontae Smith. I mean, this guy is almost unguardable at this point. Devontae. I mean, you can beat him. He can beat you any way he wants. Single coverage, touchdown deep. Tight coverage, he mosses you. 11 receptions, 178 yards, and 2 touchdowns through 2 games. 16.2 yards per reception, 11.9 per target. His average depth of target right now is 14.8. He's on another level, Gino. There's not a lot of receivers that look better than Devontae, right? Outside of Justin Jefferson, I don't know who looks better than him.
How does a 160-pound man
make that first catch, dude? I haven't stopped. I've watched that highlight probably 30 times this week.
I mean, I saw it live against Surtain a couple years ago in Devontae's rookie season.
And by the way, he lands on his feet with that catch. He lands on his feet after.
He could probably dunk on a 13-foot basketball hoop, to be honest with you.
He's the strangest looking athlete of all time, but he might go down as the most unguardable Eagles receiver when it comes to just everything he can do.
Oh, one of the best pure route runners, without a doubt. I mean, you got to have him in that conversation, especially right now. Like him, AJ, T.O., those are
Carmichael.
top 10 guys already, right? Like,
and if I'm a corner, if I can choose one to not guard, it might be Devontae, just again, based on his style.
Yeah, because AJ, like, you could try and rough him up a little bit. You could get away with a little more. You miss a swipe at Davante, who's like a stick figure.
It's over. It's over.
You're gone.
That's what happened with that deep touchdown. I mean, the Vikings corner thought he was handing him off to a safety, and gone. I mean, Davante
Caleb
Smith
Evans couldn't even get a hand on him, though.
Right,
like,
he's not Deshaun Jackson, but he is 4.3, 4.4 speed. I mean, it's an unbelievable performance. Davante continues to shine. There's a lot of stock ups. That was a great win on Thursday. We'll get into stock down coming up next. Not as much stock down. I want to talk about Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, some of the things we noticed Thursday that could improve. So we'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today's show is sponsored by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. And Gino and I, we do our LOE 3 every Friday where we pick 3 player props for you each. We try to win you some money every single week. You should do the same. Snap into NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, they get $200 back in bonus bets, guaranteed. All you got to do is place a $5 bet. That's $200 back in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is so easy to use too. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, futures, all that and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. We're wrapping up this Monday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Louis DiBiase alongside Gino Camilleri. Stock up, stock down after a 34-28 win Thursday night over the Minnesota Vikings. And Gino, I don't want to say like stock down for this segment because for Jalen Hurts, I want to talk about. I don't really think it was a stock down performance. I mean, he had nearly 200 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 passing, 2 rushing, a couple of unbelievable deep completions. Again, I don't think he's still playing at the elite bar that he set in 2022. But with that being said, you said this last week, the floor is so much higher. Like he's still, again, that interception was not great. Still times early in the game, he didn't know what to do against the blitz, was a little conservative, felt some weird pressure in the pocket, but he's still making elite plays every week. I mean, that touchdown to Davante on the blitz, where a guy's in his mouth making contact and he puts it 60 yards on a rope. The touchdown he called back to AJ Brown was great. The other deep attempt to Brown, like seeing him avoid pressure, stepping up in the pocket. He would not have done that 2 years ago. He figured out the blitz beautifully Thursday, 8 for 11, 153 yards and a touchdown, a 145.1 rating. Jalen, again, the stock isn't like rising through the roof, but I don't think he's, again, the national perspective is he's struggling like Burrow and Allen, and that's just not the case at all.
No, I mean, the numbers aren't gaudy. But
no.
Look at the game plan last week. They didn't need to be gaudy because look at the run game.
Right.
Week 1 is definitely a different conversation, but I thought if you were going to only give him underneath areas and he is being smart outside of the 1 interception that he threw because he wasn't smart and he forced it, take the check down game all game long. I think the offensive game plan and the offensive play design needs to figure it out in terms of how to take advantage of those short areas. And maybe let's just toss a simple 2017 mesh in there where we're getting guys in the middle of the field. But Jalen Hurts has come such a long way in terms of processing, in terms of understanding pressure. Yeah. How many guys fall to the ground on that ball that he delivered to Devontae Smith and just like, I'm not taking this hit? Or just throw it out of bounds.
Oh, Mac Jones falls. I watched the same play on Sunday night. And
it's exactly what I was referencing, Lou.
And again, he had a bad first half. All right, I shouldn't say a bad first half. He struggled a little bit, but in the second half, Hurts' passing numbers, 8 for 10, 111 passing yards, 2 total touchdowns. Should have had that other one for AJ Brown if Rashad Penny doesn't throw a rusher into the ground after Jalen had already escaped. So again, I'm not saying Jalen Hurts' stock is down. There's still a ceiling there that we know he can get to that he hasn't been at so far this year. But at the same time, Gino, like again, the play calling's been suspect. Teams are playing him a lot different now. They're sending a lot of pressure on these RPO plays. They're saying you can give it to the running back. You're not getting outside the pocket, running or throwing the football. And like as you mentioned earlier, teams are like they were playing a lot deeper on him. Like they were sending pressure, but when Hurts figured that out, they were rushing only 3. They're not daring him to throw as much as they used to. And
that's why you have to take advantage of those intermediate/short areas, I thought.
And running the ball too, Gino. Like the Chiefs a few years ago teams started guarding them different. They respected the deep ball, and the Mahomes was still forcing it. You had to be okay with death by 1,000 paper cuts. The Eagles figured that out on Thursday.
I thought the game plan that the Buffalo Bills used against the Vegas Raiders with Josh Allen, who was like out of control week one, then they're like, okay, you just need to put the ball in space. Like, just get it to the playmakers. And I thought they did a great job. I thought Ken Dorsey schemed up a very good game plan of just hitting those intermediate. Those are the
great point.
If you watch Colorado State play Colorado, which I know the entire nation did the other night, they ran simple, hail mummy. We're going to run shallow cross mesh all game long, get it to our playmaker. Let A.J. Brown run for 300 yards on the ground after the carry, and same with Dallas Goedert, but stop with the dumb screens to the outside where it's 3-on-3. You got one free guy who's got to make them. They haven't worked in 2 years.
No.
Why not use the tight end screen? That worked. Instead of having a split zone to the running back one side and a split zone to the tight end screen the other way, just get it to Dallas and do what worked. Going back to, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Maybe you got to dig back into that well and figure that out. But all in all, I think the offense in that second half with plus the 4 minutes before halftime, if they can do that, Lou, they're going to win a crap ton of football games playing like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They put up 34, and I don't think they're close to playing to their ceiling. And that's the best part. Gino, again, like the Eagles, are they perfect right now? No. Do they look like they did to start 2022? No. But it's very understandable why they don't look the same. I mean, again, you have to put everything into context. Brand new coordinators, new starters on both sides of the ball, tougher opponents that have tape on what you did last year, higher expectations. Honestly, I think these years, after a title run, when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, and then you don't, and then you lose free agents, you lose coaches because of everything, all the success you had. In the NFL, honestly, that might be the toughest transition because of all those factors I just laid out. It's harder, I think, to maintain this contention when all that happens versus rebuilding versus pretty much anything. So the fact that you still are 2-0, you put up 34 points, and you're dealing with all this, I think that shows that they're a good team that still has championship DNA.
That's a great point. The championship DNA. Look at the Bengals right now. They're starting 0-2. Is anybody questioning them? Justin Herbert, 0-2.
Yeah, if you think
anybody questioning them?
Look at Burrow. I mean, whew.
There's one quarterback I watched yesterday that I would take over Jalen, maybe. Everybody else, I trust Jalen. Even though the numbers aren't gaudy, even though he's not looking like his MVP self right now, his evolution and his maturity of where he is as a player right now puts me at ease every single week. And that's why he can hold himself accountable on that dumb interception, the dumb fumble. He will hold himself as accountable as anybody. It just has to get back to that synchronicity. Unlike 2018, when Mike Groh and Peterson and Wentz weren't on the same page. That's a slow transition when you lose those coordinators. Brian Johnson, I mean, Shane Steichen's calling a hell of a game in Indy. Brian Johnson, he'll get there. Just relax. Just Aaron Rodgers, RELAX. We just got to take a step back. They're now going to have 11 days between their two games. That's a boatload of time to fix those little things. And it's nothing big, Lou. It's just getting back to what you know, getting back to what worked. The run game clearly works. Stoutland is the best run game coordinator in the NFL right now. Let's just get those two units, the pass game and the run game, synchronized.
Gino, before we go, thoughts on the, I don't want to call it an incident, but it's got national attention. What do you think of what happened with A.J. Brown on the sideline?
If you saw when he was walking off the field, he gave like a little chest bump with a little mouth that he took appreciation or took accountability for. And I put out a tweet that I will say right here. Everybody else outside of Philly's freaking out. I said that. Everybody inside Philly is saying, until this guy is sitting in his driveway with the national media around him and his shirt's off and he's doing sit-ups calling out his starting quarterback.
Or he's anonymously doing it like Alshon Jeffrey.
Then we got issues. I don't think there's going to be problems between Jalen and AJ. He's the godfather to AJ's daughter, and they have a great relationship. It's just competitors, man. It's SEC competition. That's the mold that you wanted. You didn't want guys that were just going to go in there and be like, all right, I didn't get cut. No, you want guys to be like that. Like, give me the damn ball. I want everybody on my offense to be like
I'm with
that.
you. And I think everybody's lying if they said they wouldn't feel the same way. Everybody that's an athlete like this wants the opportunity to make plays and contribute to the winning, even when you are winning. And that's what I said too. Like, it's not great that they're fighting on the sidelines or arguing, but at least they're not doing it anonymously like Alshon did, or at least they're not doing it to the media like Terrell Owens did. And again, they're best friends. That I think sometimes the national fans and media forget that they have that relationship, so they see that and they're like, oh, QB wide receiver drama with a good team, like let's lean into that. I will say again, I 100% agree with you. I understand why he was upset. He ran a lot of clearing routes on Thursday. star receivers don't love doing that when you do it over and over again. Again, and everybody feels this way. I think what my issue is with AJ when he does this is the fact that he does show it. And it's given the situations of like when he has gotten frustrated. Like if they were losing, the passing game was terrible, he's not getting the ball, okay. But the 2 times that he's gotten mad in Philly were when you're up 38-7 in a playoff game, and the other one is Thursday when you're up 2 scores late in the game following a touchdown from your guy that you said is a wide receiver 1 on the opposite side. And you're coming off a game where you had 7 catches and you probably should have had more. So again, I'm not blaming AJ for feeling the way he did. I will say just the timing is what tends to bother me a little bit with the last 2 incidences.
But they won both of those games.
That's what bothers me is like, AJ, like I get it. I would feel that way even if my team won too and I wasn't contributing, but it's like to do that on the sideline, I don't know. But again, it's not a big deal and people are blowing it out of proportion. This is not T.O., this is not Alshonimus. The sky's not falling with that for sure.
Nope. This Eagles team, I think the first 2 weeks taught you a lot about who they are.
Yeah.
They're a team that's going to be in close games, and that's what the NFL is.
They're going to have no choice.
1-score games, and you just got to make sure you close it out. Nick Sirianni said it best before that Minnesota game. It's not who's toughest, it's who's toughest the longest. I think they showed that the last 2 weeks.
Monday Night Football coming up next for the Birds. They play the 2-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We've got previews for you all week long. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles wherever you get the show and on YouTube as well. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. This has been Locked On Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We'll see you tomorrow. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.